So I'm Bernie Orglmeister. I'm CEO and a senior engineer at Skyview Tech. The company's been founded in 2007. I've been in IT all my life. My degree is in information systems from St. Joe's. Our company, again, since 2007, our focus is on proactive managed IT and cybersecurity, and we provide the entire IT department for our clients. So from help desk all the way to virtual CIO and CISO and security. So most businesses, they think, they live in a beautiful little neighborhood where everybody works well with each other and everybody's looking out for each other. Everybody's taking care of each other, just like your homes and your neighbors. And unfortunately, reality is a little different, right? The cyber attacks we hear every day. This morning, we heard some additional breaches that were just published. So the world we live in business is very different, right? It's a lot of the stuff doesn't get advertised, and it puts many of the businesses out of business, right? So this is really the mean streets of where businesses work. And the reason is you don't want to go around telling your other business, hey, I've been attacked, right? I had a breach. I had to notify all my clients that all their information got leaked. So unfortunately, the business community keeps it quiet, and that creates a false sense of security for everybody. So everybody thinks this is not going to happen to me, right? So the main industries are under attack: finance, healthcare, construction, legal, and manufacturing. And when we look at these finance, obviously they have people's financial information. They have their, if you're Amy, you have people's tax returns for years. The healthcare industry, we have all their private information, all their, security information, all the health information that you can use to really steal their identity. The construction one is a little interesting. Construction, they have a lot of construction sites which all have computers and internet, and they don't think to really protect the data. But if you look at it, if somebody gets a hold of that data, they'll have the blueprints to that bank they're building down the street, or they're still getting a lot of information from construction companies. Construction companies are very interesting in cybersecurity. Legal, obviously, they have all their data from their clients also, especially during cases. They might have medical data, they might have social security numbers, again, all that stuff. And manufacturers, a lot of them think, oh, we just have machines building stuff, nobody's going to hack us or attack us. But all that stuff is online, all that stuff is available for a good hacker to get into it. And you can, for instance, speed up a machine, and through the Internet of Things, you can make it break, and the manufacturer's out of business.
Bernie, one thing on the construction.
Yeah.
I have a number of clients who either deal with construction or in the construction as well, especially from the financing part. One of the other reasons that construction has been hit a lot is because a lot of the people are using smaller, they want to use small businesses and who are not sophisticated. And there's a lot of money because every month or every period you have what's called a draw to get paid. And they'll often do the phishing and say, hey, we need a draw right now. We need to pay this construction person right now. And they don't have the controls in place that, oh, you got an email, call somebody. I know a bank took $500,000 out of a construction company because they got an email that was supposedly from the president of the company saying it had to be wired to this other place. And the person did not, at the bank, took that as belief did not do a second validation, did not do a phone validation, and the money went out of that bank account. And again, it was a wire. It went, and of course, that receiving money immediately went out too. That's the way the scams are set up. Obviously, the employee at the bank is no longer at the bank, and the bank did, put the money back in because it was their fault and everything else. But that often happens within the construction companies themselves. And this happens on the finance side. And so it's, again, you've got to have control. So I know you'll address that as well. But the construction is rampant with, not rampant, excuse me, I don't need that word, but the people working in constructions are small businesses. They're not 500,000 people. They're not 11,000 people in the company. There's a very small group.
They really can't afford it to not have the protections, right? It's really
exactly. Yeah, they cannot afford it.
But I would also add that these are 5 industries that, again, are consistently under attack, but any company is susceptible to a cybersecurity attack. So once in a while, we'll meet business owners who say, oh, that doesn't affect me. And we say, of course it does. It affects everyone.
Well, look at the casinos. The casinos got hacked, and it was amazing that was a very simple hacking that happened.
Exactly.
Yeah, social engineering.
We'll talk about that in a bit, but and we're a small group, so anybody has comments, please,
Well, I just want to reiterate, I work with small companies, but I also came out of the corporate, and I came out of property casualty insurance. So I was in the business whenever cybersecurity insurance came out, and it never realized what a great market it was going to be. People were like, are people going to buy this? But I recently, I guess it was 2022, a CEO I know who is in a global chemical company. It was a very sophisticated hacking into theirs, where literally it was just a segment, just like Amy said about pushing the wire transfer. They had basically ghosted him enough that they had the letterhead, the way he talked and everything. And the only thing that picked up was that this person was surprised that the CEO was writing directly to her, but she was still high enough, like at a director level, but not the. So it gets back to the human behavior, which is why I always talk to my small business clients. This is something they can't afford. They don't have the margins, but it was so close. And I just happened to talk to the CEO like 48 hours after all this happened. And he apologized for not getting back to me on something. And he was telling me about this. And he said, Georgine, we can't, it's not if, it's when. And the sophistication is much like we think of the things we get in our personal spam as like, oh yeah, you can read it and tell it. But this was an organization with lots of controls. I mean, they had operations in China, they had plants in China, they had plants globally, as well as domestically. So it is something that, why should you care about it? Everybody needs to care about it. It's like, and I am sad there's not more people in the meeting, but looks great.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's happening everywhere. I think everybody you talk to probably has a story, right? Because it's so common nowadays. So really, something we want to talk about today is risk analysis and evaluating the cybersecurity risk, right? Most businesses don't spend enough time evaluating the risk, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later. With COVID, when everybody went remote, people just said, all right, take your computer home, or here, everybody access this connection on Monday, right? And I have a brother-in-law who works for Volkswagen in Germany, and they told him on Friday, everybody works remote on Monday. And the IT department went, wait a minute, we're not set up for this. Yeah. And the IT department scrambled just to get bandwidth to allow, 6,000 employees all of a sudden to work remote. But that's, people rush to remote environments without proper thought.
And they're still using those same remote, they're not using a VPN. They're using the home network. They're using, and you never know who your
Social
kid gave the
media.
password to, to your network, because the kids are then at the home and using the same network to get onto their, iPad and the phone and everything else. And you introduce so many potential threats that way.
Yeah. So again, the organizations they underestimate the risk of losing their data. It's like, oh, it's my data. Who wants my data? Or, but the thing is that the criminals don't want your data. You want your data. So if you don't have access to it, or if your intellectual property gets leaked out, or your client list gets leaked out, or you have to notify your clients, that's the part that a lot of business are not understanding. And to understand really the threat is to reduce the risk of data. So again, it's all coming back to risk management and risk analysis on where your data is and how to protect it. So security is priority. A lot of small businesses, I'm not going to read all this, but it's a concern for businesses. A lot of them don't know what to do. Again, it's all risk. So the big risk on all of this, it's obviously financial loss, right? If your system is down for a week, or we had one of our clients saying when we started with them, they're like, oh, something happens, we can go back to paper, and then something happened to their computers, and I said, all right, we'll fix it tomorrow, and they're like, no, we can't be down for a day now, right? So the financial loss of not having access to your systems, to your data, it's still not fully understood or properly understood by the businesses. So that one of the main ways people get in is business email compromise. So what that is if somebody gets access to somebody's email data, they log in as the CEO or the finance person or anybody, or if they just we had a client where the criminals registered a domain similar to their domain. So their domain had an I in it, and they registered the same name and put a second I in it. And similar to what Georgianne was saying, they were sending emails to the finance person saying, please wire 80 grand to this account in Bank of America. And she replies, we don't have 80,000 in the account. He says, how much do we have? She says 60,000. So goes back and forth. She wires the money. Finally, the CEO was flying this whole time. He lands and goes, what's going on here? And luckily they were able to get the money back. And my understanding is some of those criminals will keep the account open because they're doing the same scam in multiple companies. So they kind of lucked out there, because if they had closed the account, take the money and ran, it would have been gone forever. So 60% of the cybercrime losses in 2022 were because of business email compromise.
Wow.
And the average is about 94,000 per complaint. And those are just the people that report this to the FBI, right? A lot of people just like, okay, we lost the money. I don't want to, again, the whole community, right? They don't want to be in the news as somebody who got hacked, especially if it's a smaller company in a small community, they don't want to talk about that. So it's pretty scary. And, we just mentioned the casinos. The way these guys got in, they went on LinkedIn and found somebody who works at the help desk at MGM, get their name, call them over, and by social engineering, they were able to get somebody's password reset. And once they're in, even though the user might not have full access to everything, they can see a lot. And then from there, they try to guess other people's passwords. And so, I mean, $100 million, even to MGM, it's still a big hit there, obviously. And then
and Bernie, not to mention in that casino example, the disruption in their business. I mean, customers had to now use cash instead of credit cards and other ways to have fun at the casino and gamble, and the PR ramifications of that for that casino, and I'm sure they missed a lot of revenue because people just didn't want to go there and they were afraid to do any transactions with that business. So it has a big snowball effect beyond what actually initially happens to regain access to their network.
Yeah, and we're still talking about it, right? Their name is still associated with being hacked, probably for years to come. And then ransomware is a little different than business email compromises. When somebody attacks your network, your server, your computer, and encrypts the data. Again, in this case, they don't want your data, you want your data. So if you can't get to your QuickBooks files, if you can't get to your CAD drawings, if you can't get to your documents where you're producing a report for a client, and the data, it's encrypted, you will, even though it's officially against the law to pay ransom, you will pay the ransom, and you'll figure out how to send those bitcoins to people. And I mean, every 11 seconds there's a new one. I mean, that's 3 times the amount of slides been on the screen here.
But also, even if and when a business pays the ransom, there's no guarantee that anything happens in terms of getting your data back. And even if you do get your data back, you're now really on the dark web with your information, and then you still need to work with your IT team to reintroduce the data into your network and get the computers and your servers back up and running. It's a whole slew of activities that need to happen to get your network up and running, which equals lots of money to make that happen, in addition to what you're paying for ransom.
So everybody's like, this happened to us. It's happened to us yet, right? You're bound to be attacked, and you need to have the protections in place, right? So just to go over some of these numbers, dwell time is when a computer or a network is infected and the perpetrators are not doing anything. They're sitting there waiting, or they're looking for what they can find out on the network. So 23 days is the average where they are poking around, seeing what else they can find, what can they do. And then all of a sudden, hardly to us in the IT, is Friday night, they'll trigger it because they know IT people are going home and nobody's going to notice until Monday. Cyber insurance, we're going to talk a little bit about it, but it's skyrocketing because in the beginning, insurance, they were just giving out cyber insurance to everybody. Hey, here, pay me an extra $200 and you can have it. And now they're like, oh, we got to start paying these ransoms, and we got to pay to recover. Like, they have to hire an IT company to help reinstall Windows on 100 computers. It's a big hit to them. So they're really taking this seriously. And then cyber warfare is something that's in the channels that we read and participate. Ever since the Ukraine war started, there's been a big increase on attacks mostly from Russia and China. They're not talking about it in the news a lot yet, but the impact of it it's not fully understood yet exactly how much that's going to be. But the bottom line is the impact reputation of the business, right? If you have to go out and tell your clients, or you have to buy LifeLock to 300 of your clients because you got breached, it's a big hit to you. So the big start here is where do we start, right? So it's understanding who owns the data and who is doing what. So the first part of the responsibility wheel, as we call it here, is the data owner. Who owns the data and establishes the budget? That's usually the business owner it's their business, their data, right? And then information technology team is the IT department, which implements the solution. So they take care of the data for you. And information security is usually the CISO, the certified, information security officer, which larger companies have in-house, or you can outsource it to other companies will provide that for you. So they're doing the risk insight and to mitigate, they're working the high level stuff to help the information technology implement it so the data owner has the data. So here's some examples of from the technology side, what tools that every business should have. And I'm not going to go into them, but like security awareness training, like the MGM hack happens because somebody wasn't aware of, wasn't paying attention, or they didn't have the training to know that this is a little suspicious that this guy's asking for a password reset. Password, I saw a report this morning. Password 123 is still the number 1 password out there. Password 12345 is the number 2 password out there. It's
how
just,
do they know? I'd be interested to know, how do they know that if everything's encrypted?
it was the article I read this morning was a password wallet type place, and they did an analysis of the passwords out there. So that's how. And it's interesting because they gave how long it'll take for a hacker to try to break that password, right? If they're trying different passwords. Obviously, password 123 took like 1 second. Password 12345 still took 1 second.
And it's amazing, like when we onboard a new client and the client doesn't always have their passwords amazingly enough. And most of the time, if not all of the time, we're able to figure it out because a lot of the common passwords are used by the previous IT firm or the previous in-house IT person that really wasn't using best practices in the way they should, because obviously we were able to figure out what passwords were being used or reused throughout the system.
Yeah, it's scary how many times we were able to figure out and get in without having to reset anything. We just guess some of those passwords. Like the article talked about how Amazon, the number 1 password to log into your Amazon account is Amazon. So people think, oh, they're being clever, right? Nobody's going to figure it out. But the beauty of all this, it all starts with the risk assessment, right? So the risk assessment is what allows IT and the cybersecurity people to know what data you care about, so we can keep it protected. And an example that we use is like how you protect your house, right? So first you identify what you want to protect in your house. So family, pets, collectibles, documents, electronics. So same thing in your business. You identify what data you need to protect. Some data you need to protect more, some less. And again, it's risk management. It's okay, this data we don't care about if we lose it. So we're going to say our mitigation is not do anything. But the second part is you protect the data. So you're protecting your house. You put doors, you lock the doors, you educate the kids to not let people come in after 7 p.m. You put yard signs, protected by so-and-so security. And then if something happens, you want to detect it. So you have an alarm, motion sensor, doorbell camera. Sometimes the neighbors will help you detect, hey, something's happened at your house. Something happens, you respond. So you have your dog, you cover insurance, you call the police. Worst case, you have a baseball bat. So all this is all very similar to data. So you identify, you protect the data by having antivirus, by having backups, by having SIEM, which is I'll talk a little bit later. It's look at the logs in your systems and analyzing them. And then you have the tools to detect it. You have an advanced antivirus that's going to detect that something's happening. And then you respond by having a security incidents response, or you have the people, the IT department ready to make changes as soon as something happens. So again, and then the last part is for the data, you're going to recover. You're going to have update your incident response plan. You got to review your backup systems, insurance, medical, emergency equipment.
And I just wanted to clarify, respond. We don't necessarily wait for something to happen, right? Our tools are monitoring for any type of nefarious activities and then mitigate that activity at the moment it's recognized to prevent it becoming a bigger escalation of ransomware, like with MGM Resorts.
So the components of cybersecurity is people, process, and technology, and we'll go through them. But really, we need all 3 of them working together for proper cybersecurity. If one or 2 of the others are not going to be enough. So for the people, you start with the risk assessment. a lot of the stuff is some things that we do. We do dark web security scans to see if your data has been compromised, if your password has been exposed. Because unfortunately, people reuse passwords. As much as I hate that, people will still use the same. Hey, it's a great password. Let me use it for my Amazon, for my email, for everything. So if it gets compromised, all your systems are compromised. And then ongoing security training for employees. So to keep security top of mind. Again, the MGM thing where the help desk guy wasn't really thinking, or didn't pay attention to the training and allow the people to get passwords resets when they shouldn't have. And then processes, there's several IT frameworks for security. We like NIST and CIS. They kind of give you they're a little complicated, but they give you like, do you have these controls? And, this is what you need to do to verify that you have them. So you can actually get NIST or CIS certified or get a certification that you're following those. At worst case, if something happens, insurance says like, what are we doing? I said, oh, we're following the framework. So it is in your side to follow some kind of framework.
Are there specific numbers or identifiers for those frameworks? Or if I did
if you do NIST, it's called the NIST CSF, Cybersecurity framework. And then I think it's CIS 18 is the IT one.
Thank you.
And again, policies and procedures, right? Like, if you don't tell your users that they shouldn't reuse passwords, they can say, oh, I don't know. And so having policies and procedures in place for all the security is super important. And then security audits, reporting on the findings, a lot of stuff that we do for our clients to keep security. And then technology is the part I like, but it's really 24/7 monitoring on servers, is monitoring your desktops, patch management, patch the computers, right? When Microsoft puts security updates out, it's very important to get them implemented. Security Operations Center is something that's looking at all those features and acting on it. SIEM is a tool that's basically looking at logs. So when your firewall is sitting there and is blocking things from coming into your network, it's generating logs saying, hey, this IP in Russia is trying to log in every day from 1 to 3 in the morning. Your firewall is stopping it. So no harm, no foul, but the SIEM will look at that and warn you or alert your IT people saying, hey, somebody from this IP address is trying to log in every morning. So far, they haven't guessed the password, but who knows? So the SIEM will let the IT people know that they need to block that IP, for instance, or implement additional security measures.
And by the way, your firewall is stopping it with the caveat that you have an IT team monitoring your firewall, ensuring your firewall is up to date, upgrades have been made, that it's current, so that it's doing what it's supposed to do for your computer network.
And antivirus, antivirus have evolved over time. The latest ones are the business called MDR, Managed Detection and Response. So they're just not detecting it and stopping it, they're responding. So the smart antivirus right now, if they see an encryption happening, they can actually revert that, or they can take the computer offline completely and let the SOC still have access to it and stop it. Backups, everybody has a backup. My data's on my USB plug next to my computer. So, if somebody steals my laptop, hopefully they'll unplug my backup and leave it there. So that's usually not what happens, right? They'll take the whole thing. So, hybrid backup, have a backup locally and in the cloud. So if something happens, your business burns down, you still have access to the data.
So
and again, the MDR.
Cloud. I'm going to go, 10 years ago, there was a lot of, oh no, it's on the cloud, everybody can get to it. Obviously, with some of the software and companies, you still have to be very, very careful of what's there.
Sure.
But if you're utilizing the known Microsoft clouds or the known AWS servers and all of that, they have, I believe, and I'm just asking for the confirmation from you, they have enough of this going on as well, that if you're, Susan, shaking your
No, it's,
Susan's about to give herself
Yeah.
a confession with that.
I'm going to find a link here, but AWS has a disclaimer on their website that just because your data is on the cloud doesn't mean you're protected. It's a shared responsibility. So you still have to protect the perimeter of how your computer is accessing the cloud, right, Bernie?
Yeah, so a lot of people, exactly, they say, oh, my data's in the cloud. I don't need any of your tools that you're trying to tell me I need. And I say, well, you're accessing the data from somewhere.
Yeah.
You need to protect that computer somehow. So there's it's called a virus called a keylogger, where they record every keystroke that you're typing. Guess what? They're catching the website you're going to, they're catching the username and the password, right? Because you're typing that in. So once they have that, they have the same access that you have. So
to your point,
it certainly helps having it in the cloud.
Yep.
But it doesn't, it's not a panacea that's going to protect you completely, right? You still,
well, and I guess what I'm saying is I don't have to protect the data in the cloud. I have to protect the access.
well, I would
data.
read the agreement. Microsoft says we will store the data for you, but we're not responsible. So
Right.
let's say your computer dies and you go to restore it and there's an issue because they didn't do something, they will be like, yeah, sorry, good luck. So
I guess in my mind, I'm thinking that I already have in place the computers, have the antivirus, they have a lot of things already. We use password protection, password monitor. So we don't have the same passwords for every single access that we do. And I guess, like you said, it is this whole Venn diagram of people, process, and technology, where you've got to look at it everywhere it is. So it's one of those, okay,
just think the technology is going to take care of it. You can't just, So actually,
and it's more than just having an antivirus. Again, there's a variable aspects of people, processes, and technologies that have to be implemented to help mitigate risk.
Right.
So this is actually, if you have people, don't have people trained, you don't have process technology, there's nothing there. Just the people, but no process technology, you can't really execute. If you just have the processes, but the people don't know about it, or you don't have the tools, it's
totally
effort, right? If you just have the technology, but nobody's following it, there's no procedures for anything, it's just shelfware. It's just not really doing anything. Again, if you don't have the technology, you can't really scale, right? You can have the people and the processes doing what they need to do, but for medium and larger size companies, you can't really scale the security there. If you don't have the processes, people are doing whatever they want, even though they have some of the technology there, it's still lacking. And then if you're not training the people on your process and technology, there's no adoption. So really the solution is to have all three. We think it's the methodology that we use is to have all three. And unfortunately, some people don't follow all three, or they're like, oh, I don't care about this. And I'm like, well, you're really not covering yourself.
Or it's a matter of you don't know what you don't know, right? So they think a small business owner may think they're protected because of what they've read on the internet, but there's more to it, as we're outlining here.
And then
I was also concerned about viruses and ransomware, and an appropriate backup strategy, because if you did get ransomware and your online store was compromised, you ought to have an offline backup or a write-only backup, those sorts of things. I'm sure you'll talk about that later.
Yeah, well, I mean, exactly. So the backup, you need to have, we think you should have 3 backups. You have the local one, which allows you to restore quickly. Then you have one in the cloud, which is physically separated from you. And then the third one is really disconnected from your servers, for instance. So if a lot of times when they encrypt their server, they'll encrypt anything attached to it. Or we had a client who the owner clicked on something Friday night and started encrypting his computer, then saw he had map drives to the server, started encrypting the server. The server didn't see anything, didn't have a virus on it, because it was that computer who was encrypting it. So you're allowed to encrypt your files, you're allowed to put passwords on files. So it didn't see anything wrong. And then by Monday morning, everything was encrypted. So they had to restore it, and took about a week because they had only cloud backup at the time. So again, local backup, cloud backup, and offsite backup is the recommended one. And something that Georgianne spoke before is cybersecurity. So 1 in 10 organizations don't have any cybersecurity against cyber attack. And that's one thing that we always ask our clients is, when was the last time you looked at your insurance policy and talked to your insurance broker? Like, what do I have for cybersecurity? Because they might have some old language there from 10 years ago that they are interpreting differently than you do now. Or they might say, oh, you want a cybersecurity rider? It's going to cost you an extra, $5,000. So it's a lot of people, especially if you have older insurance, talk to your broker and see what you have and what's covering, what's not. So this is an actual screenshot of a insurance renewal. And it used to be one paragraph, right? You have antivirus, backup, and firewall. Now it's, you have all the stuff and all the other stuff that are listed in the other slide. And one client of ours, a lot of them, they don't know what it is. So they send it to us and they said, can you tell me if I have all this? So we say, well, you have half of it, but you don't have the rest. A lot of it is just turning it on. It's not going to cost you anything, like multi-factor authentication. And they're like, no, we're fine. Don't worry about it. So they actually got denied their insurance renewal. And what they ended up doing is they had to cancel it because they didn't want to have to tell the next person that they had their insurance denied. So they canceled insurance and found somebody else through the broker. But, it's an insurance company. Again, they were giving out insurance to anybody. And then when they started having to pay for their ransomware or reinstalling Windows on 100 computers, they got wise. So here's just an example of an actual two clients of ours. There was a law firm, about 18 million. They're both law firms. One is a little larger, but 18 is about the same number. 2021, they had endpoint protection, which is antivirus, but they didn't have anything else, and their insurance went up by 10 grand. And this other client, they had security training, and they didn't have the SOC. They added the SOC, so it did go up, but not as much as this other company. So again, the more things you check off on your renewal, the better off you are to either get a lower rate or hopefully avoid the possibility of getting declined.
But not just check it off because you're going to get a better rate.
Make sure you have it, right? Yeah.
Because it's actually implemented.
Don't just check it off, please. Yes.
And we actually get a lot of calls from commercial insurance providers who have small business owners who don't know what they have or what they should have or what they need. And so we help those small business owners get up to snuff so that they can be compliant with their cyber insurance policies.
And also a number of businesses such as financial services, banks and such they do questions as to, do you have this and this, and do your vendors, because a lot of the cybersecurity happens through a vendor having access to your systems, which goes through. And so again, you've got to be, if you're working, and a number of us work with other clients, other professional systems, we have to have it as well, because we're a vendor and we have to have certified that we have those controls in place as well. So I know somebody who does HR, outsource HR, and they have a financial services firm, and they have to go through everything, and they had to get a lot of this in place just to be a vendor of choice for that financial services company.
Yeah, very similarly, we have a client in the pharma industry that works with other larger pharmaceuticals where they subcontract out their employees. And one of the subcontracted employees was blowing off the security training, and they almost got terminated because the subcontractors were not taking it seriously. So as a result, our client said, hey, we have to take this more seriously because we almost lost this contract. So again, it's a snowball effect.
Yeah. And again, like we just said, compliance will dictate the requirements of your security standards a lot of times. So obviously, for the smaller clients, HIPAA, PCI, and SOX. This is a little bit just to show you guys from a technical point of view how this is a generic standard network, comparable, you can scale this to larger companies, but basically you have the internet, you have a firewall protecting the perimeter and the inside. In this case, they have 2 internet providers in case one goes down. They have external users, and inside they have a wireless server, PC, just generic network. So how do we help protect, how we think these clients need to be protected? So you need the Security Operations Center, which is looking at reports from the firewall. Like I said, the SIEM is taking it, it's grabbing the logs from the firewall, it's grabbing logs from the servers, even like somebody's trying to guess the administrator login for the server, and all that gets correlated with artificial intelligence and a live person. So in our case, we will get notifications at 2 a.m. say, hey, something's happened here, we did this steps and we think we're good, or they'll say, oh, we need to do something additional to protect the client. Also, mobile device management. Everybody has all the information on their phone now, right? You're accessing your bank, you're accessing your client's data. So corporations are always fighting about mobile device management. How are we going to protect that? And especially if it's not company provided phones, right? How are they managing that? So something that we can provide, or we tell our clients to provide, is we encrypt the hard. We put some policies on the phone, so you have to use some pins and some additional security to protect the mobile devices. A lot of clients, a lot of people have Office 365. All the data is in the cloud. So what we tell people, even though your data is with Microsoft 365, you still need to worry about it. For instance, if somebody logs in from Pennsylvania to your 365 email, somebody logs in from Texas at the same time or 2 minutes later, Microsoft doesn't care. They have the password. They're allowed to get in, right? Well, we think that's not enough. So we have some additional security we put in to detect what, in this case, called impossible travel. You can't log in for both places at the same time. So somebody's got to be wrong. So they'll flag it. They'll notify the SOC. They will notify us, and we can block that because this happens all the time. So they're, especially with people reusing passwords and Office 365. So again, it's all layered security to keep the data protected. And then finally, encrypt your hard drive. That's something Microsoft is forcing, I think, with the latest Windows 11. But so if you leave your laptop in a cabin in New York City, for instance, they can't take the hard drive out and try to get to the data, right? It's completely encrypted. So really, from the takeaways here, the minimum technology that we believe people should have, you need to have policies, policies in general, incident response plan. You need to kind of know what is the plan in case something happens to my data, to my business, and have it written out. We have ours. It's probably, I think, 15 pages long, but it lines up. If I'm out of town, all my guys can look at it, and it has our insurance number in it, has our insurance phone number in it, has do this, do that, don't do this. Here's a sample email to send to clients. It's very important to have a response plan ahead of time, not when it's hitting the fan, right? The MFA is also one of the minimum things you really need to implement is multi-factor authentication. Everybody hates it because every time you log in something and sending a text to your phone, or you have to go to Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, but it's really just validating that you are who you are, and even that at some people can compromise now. So the next step is going to be biometrics, right? The next thing is going to be really eye scans, thumb scans, and all that stuff. And endpoint detection and response. So that's the antivirus. So just real quick on the old antivirus, Symantec, McAfee, we all had them. You install it, it downloads definition files once a week, and you're protected. So what happens, a new virus comes out, McAfee doesn't know about it, they get notified about it, they studied it, they write some code for it, and they push it out to your antivirus. That can take days, sometimes a week, right? McAfee used to be once a week, they'll update you. So the new ones, they actually are very lightweight, and they are checking online all the time for new things. So if one of them gets infected or detects something, everybody in the world that's using that antivirus is alerted about it. And then the next step is the MDR, some smarter ones which have a SOC behind it, which are protecting the data and have live people doing things and stopping encryptions. So it's again, it's the next step of antivirus. And then the SIEM, we talked about grabbing the logs and looking at things that nobody's looking at, because those devices are just sitting there doing what they're supposed to be doing, but they're keeping logs. And if bad things are happening, nobody's really looking at it. And that grabs it. And then backups. But it all starts with the security assessment. You need to know where and what data you want to protect. Otherwise, your CISO can't do that. And if you don't have one, reach out to somebody, or try to follow some of the frameworks. They'll talk about how to basically identify the data, protect it, and then set up the tools to, if something happens, detect it and remediate. And then obviously the last part is lessons learned. So this is about what I have. Any comments or questions or anything that we haven't addressed?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on keeping all of everyone's passwords separate? Because you want to have different passwords for all of your different logins and devices and things like that. Are there any password management, like the wallet that you mentioned? Are there any that you recommend that you think are secure?
There's a few out there. Some of them have been hacked recently. LastPass is one of them. I think using anything really is better than just trying to reuse the password, right? I can send you an email of some of the ones that we have used in the past and we tell people to use. It's unfortunately, it's really, they're good today, and then all of a sudden you read tomorrow that they got hacked or they got bought out by a bigger company, and the bigger company's not investing in it. It's big. It's a big thing. It's constant hack. It's a constant fight. Constant.
One of the people that I used to work with, and he was Lockheed Martin's chief engineer of the intelligence community. He had top level access everywhere. And what he would do is he would carry around a little black book with all his passwords in it, and that was the only way that he could keep everything straight. Right, you're not going to do it online, right? But having that physically, because no one can hack the physical unless they steal the book. Yeah, Susan just talked.
Yeah, I mean, because you still have to have one master password to get into your online passwords. And if you forget it, God forbid, you're done, right? There was something in the news about a year, maybe 3 years ago, about a Bitcoin. And I don't really understand how it all works, but you have to have a password to access your Bitcoin lock or key. And the guy had like millions of dollars of Bitcoin, and he forgot his password. And you only have, I think, up to 10 attempts to guess it. And if you go beyond that, you lose all of your money. And so it's like, and as far as I remember, the guy never just has the Bitcoin key or lock or whatever and is holding on to it, but he can't get his money because he can't remember the password, and he doesn't want to screw up and keep trying. And so I don't know what he's doing today, but you got to remember these things. And I'm kind of old school in that way. I like the book, right? Keep everything in your book, but then God forbid if your book gets stolen, there's six of one, half a dozen of the other. You got to do what works for you.
And on that Bitcoin thing, I have a colleague who did it, and he stored his number in someplace in his desk in his house, right? So he could get in and everything else. His house burned down.
Yeah, there we go.
And that was it. He had it nowhere else, and he lost, millions of dollars. I used LastPass, and yes, it was hacked. The good thing was they identified it, and it looked, from what I understand, the passwords were already encrypted, so they never actually got passwords. But LastPass was hacked, so you have to have, like Bernie's saying, you got to have this controls in place, so at least you've got something, and you've got to have a plan that if something happens, and one thing that you didn't mention, Bernie, but it's in that policies and procedures, when people leave a company, you have to turn off, that onboarding is one thing, but you've got to have an exit. When somebody leaves the company for whatever, you got to get them out of every system also. Way too often, a lot of the hacks happen because some disgruntled employee leaves, and then they, provide that password to somebody, and the access was never turned off.
So I posted in LinkedIn about a story down here in Virginia. A company let a HR person go, and then he or she posted something incredibly inflammatory, under the guise of a job wreck out there, and it just completely, they are shut down at this point. They had to shut down because it was an IT security company, of all things. Right? They were in the business of protecting their clients' IT systems, and they failed to do that basic user management on themselves.
Yep.
And along those lines, what Amy just said too, with employee onboarding and offboarding, there's many Fridays at 3:30, we get a call from a client. We're getting ready to terminate Johnny, reset his passwords, make sure he doesn't have access to anything. But also we work quite a bit with even larger businesses that have in-house IT teams to sort of be the backup IT holder of all confidential things, so that if it hits the fan with the in-house IT director, like a disgruntled employee situation, we can work with the management team to quickly make some changes on the back end while that person is getting terminated, to ensure that the company has full control and full security of their computer networks.
Yeah, the fun thing about LastPass, I'm a LastPass user, and they did have some serious data breaches. And in the investigation of that, which I've spent a bunch of time understanding, one of the things they didn't do, which frankly is very hard to do if you think about how the internet works, is they didn't encrypt the email addresses of their customers or the actual URLs of the sites that are being visited, because those are pretty public, right? They encrypted usernames and passwords. So when they lost their vault, they were able to go through and identify users of LastPass that were employees of cybersecurity or crypto vault companies, right? So you have these sort of online crypto wallets, and they then spend a bunch of extra time finding the passwords of the employees of companies that had crypto wallets. And in that, I mean, this is double-digit millions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency that was stolen. So it's a pretty targeted attack, but the crumbs were left out in the open for that attack.
Yeah.
And now they know.
Yeah. Now they know.
Yeah, and it's, again, it's one of those, why would you need that? And as things are getting more and more sophisticated, right? I mean, there's scams all the time. I was at a networking event recently, and we literally spent 5 of us talking about various scams that have gone on recently, whether they were cybersecurity, scams against the elderly, whatever. They're getting better. They are getting so much better every single day.
And that's why we say it's not just up to IT and technology to keep you safe. It's a multi-layered approach that includes people. We do training. It's not just IT is the silver bullet solution and your data backup and your antivirus is going to keep you protected. There's so much more to it. And like you said, Amy, the sophistication levels continue to rise. The spoofing is many times hard to discern. And and there's no 100% guaranteed solution, right? So the technology, the one constant in what we do is change. The technology is constantly evolving. It's growing, it's changing. So it's up to all of us as end users and as business owners to be aware.
And again, we all could personally get attacked, much less our businesses and everything else.
Mhm.
The one thing I want to say, again, being a CPA and finance person, is if you are ever asked to send money, don't. Just flat out, don't, it just is the number of people. The one guy got a call from his dad and said, "Hey, you want to meet me over at the Acme? I'm over there getting gift cards right now." It was his father. He's an IT, so anyway, we all have stories on that.
Don't send Target gift cards, no matter what, to the CEO.
Well, the funny thing is, the one story, the guy actually he had a long drive. He got a call from somewhere. He picked it up, and it's this person going through the thing. He kept him on the phone for 2.5 hours.
Oh.
And it was, one of these scams. And he's like, "Okay, well, I got the gift cards at the at Target now. They're in my car. I'm going to take them to you now, right?" And he says, "Well, did you just take?" He says, "Yeah, I just walked out with them." "No, you have to blah 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 blah," And he kept him on the phone for 2.5 hours.
Bernie does that. He plays with, when we get calls from Microsoft, your phone display says Microsoft, and it's, first of all, Microsoft is not calling to check on your computer, right? "Oh, we detected a virus on your computer. I need to remote in." You would not believe the number of calls we get every year from clients, end users that get, "Microsoft just called and I let them remote in and I don't know what they were doing, so I unplugged my computer." We're like, "What?"
The worst one we got, and I know we're running out of time, is we had a not a client, but they found us and said, "Yeah, I got a call from Microsoft and they told me blah blah blah, and they got in my computer, and then they said I owe them some money, so they told me to go get a bunch of iTunes cards." So I went to the store and bought a bunch of iTunes cards on my Discovery card, and blah, blah, and I'm like, why would Microsoft ask you to buy Apple cards, right? Like, that should be the biggest flag of them all, right? Like, hello. So yeah, so our approach is really proactive, right? So anything you can do proactively, but it costs a little bit more, but you're going to be so much happier. And when your insurance says, "Well, all right, you had everything, we'll pay you off," right? Or nothing will happen. Ideally, that's
ideal.
It's the ideal, but
also, just to add to what we've all been talking about, those stories, anyone who creates a sense of urgency, like, "You got to wire the money now, like in the next 15 minutes, because I'm going to close this deal," or you hear these stories where grandma gets a call from her grandson in Mexico and he got in an accident, he needs $10,000. Why, anything with a sense of urgency that seems off, stop, hang up, don't do it.
Yep. I actually had a call.
Can I ask?
Networking organization the other day, and it was that sense of urgency. "We got your application. Tell me what you do. Okay, you're now approved. Here's what our membership plans." And I said, "Okay, you call me. I've got to think about this and blah blah. Well, if you do it right now, there's a $50 blah 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 and blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is not a good. I'll wait for 10 minutes and you can go get your credit card." I'm like, "No, hang up, go online." Yep, it was scam. Yep. Richard.
Yeah, my apologies, Amy. Bernie, Susan, if I wanted that next level of training, we did a pretty good overview this morning. If I wanted that next level of training, from a reputable organization, where would I go? The NIST standard, the CIS standards, those frameworks.
Yeah, so obviously you can Google this. Those are, they're the those two are some of the most common ones. But that's definitely something that we do for our clients. So if you want to have a discussion after this, we can certainly set up a time and just go over some things. And
Beacon is the premier executive networking organization serving the Mid-Atlantic region. To learn more, go to beaconforlife.org.